Let's begin. Now I already have a document here with a face sketched out, and on a separate layer I've also drawn in some eyes with a slightly darker color. The vertical and horizontal lines that I've drawn across the face indicate where everything is going, such as the ears, the nose, and the lips. Now I will press Tab on my keyboard so that I can view my brush and layers window, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Command or Control G on my keyboard and compress all those layers into one group. And let's name that group Sketch. And again, in your layers window at the bottom, you can click on that folder icon to make another group, and then the paper icon next to it to add a layer to that group. Let's call that group Nose, which is going to be the first thing that we will paint. And now let's pick out our brush. You can pick out any of the default brushes on your brush window. And then let's move the spacing to about 25%. And now let's turn on dual brush. This is what will give our brush that nice pencil kind of crayon feel to it. Remember to also adjust the spacing in this case so you can get that really nice graininess. And of course, let's turn on shape dynamics, and you can also kind of turn your brush to an angle. I personally like that because it gives that cool, thin and thick line that I like to play with. And now we're ready to start painting our nose. Let's press Tab on our keyboard so that we have a full canvas to draw with. Oh, and remember to adjust your opacity and flow. This will make sure that your brush doesn't have a very strong line when you draw. And now I'm going to just lightly draw in these crevices onto the eyes, and I'm going to draw a straight line down the middle of the nose. Ensure that your line is straight. Hold down Shift on your keyboard and kind of drag the brush downward. This guarantees that you're going to have a straight line every time you draw. And now let's add a big circle in the center of that line and two circles next to it. Let's press Tab again on our keyboard to open up our layers window and lower the opacity of this. Then we're going to create a new layer on top, and I'm going to kind of draw in the nose using these guidelines. Now let's draw in like some nostrils using our guidelines. Let's play around and try a few different things. I'm going to make these very pointed as well as give her a very pointed tip as well. The shape of a nose can really alter the way someone looks. Let's try something else now. Let's try giving her a nose with some flatter looking nostrils. Let's create like a triangle shape going toward the eyes. This is a good indication of how the shading will go when you start painting. Now I want to try drawing a slightly upturned nose, so I'm going to, click Tab and move that layer slightly higher up, and then let's draw in our nostrils at a slightly lower place on our face. And let's add a darker kind of shape underneath our nostrils, since they will be more visible if the tip of our nose is higher. And again, let's draw in that kind of triangle over the nose to give our face a very kind of pinched, cute little button nose. Now on a new layer, let's go ahead and draw in a triangle shape. When it comes to kind of painting in parts of a face, it's always best to look at it as a whole, like as a complete shape, before you kind of go in there and rendering too much detail. And let's draw another triangle beneath that. This is going to be where the shadow of our nose kind of hits. Also where the Cupid's bow begins for your lips. And remember to also draw in the nostrils using our guidelines at all times. Use the stroke on the left, kind of drawing that inward from the top to bottom, and do the same on the right side as well. We're going to kind of put our nostril lines in at an angle. Now let's really just define this space. You know, think about it. As I'm drawing around here, the space beneath that will entirely be in shadow. Alright, so now let's really begin with painting in our nose. Let's draw 2 lines on either side of the nostrils. Remember to hold down the Shift key as you draw upward. And now let's draw in that triangle shape on the top. That is essentially going to be the shape of our nose, and it's going to kind of map out where the lighting will go. Now remember to turn off your shape dynamics, and selecting a nice dark brown color, let's draw in that dark triangle shape beneath our nose. This is going to be the shadow area. Now we don't want to just create a generic triangle shape. Let's start really painting around and kind of creating a space where we think the shadow would be. It kind of curves around the sides of the nostrils, and remember to kind of shape the tip of your nose as well. You can select Command or Control T on your keyboard to adjust the shape of the shadow and kind of move it around to make sure you're happy with where it is. And now using a lighter brown, let's start painting the sides of our triangle. You can hit the Alt or Option button on your keyboard, and this allows the eyedropper tool to come up. Notice that the background of my sketch is essentially a skin tone. So when I select that skin tone, what I do on my color window is kind of move the hue back and forth, and I adjust the brightness as well as the saturation to be able to get that slightly warmer skin tone. And now let's kind of add a bit of shadow to the sides of our nostrils. I'm going to move that below our main triangle shadow layer because that is kind of what defines the nose, and this is more toward like the side. It's more like the background or the mid-tone, I guess, of our nose. I usually go back and forth between the eraser and the brush tool to kind of, erase out that negative space to create my shape. And now making sure that my opacity and flow is at a lower percentage, I'm going to just keep lightly erasing and painting in as I go on. Just kind of, don't overthink about it. Think of this as a meditative process, and, look at your own nose in the mirror and just really pay attention to where the shadows and the lights are hitting. And now using an even darker brown with our shape dynamics on, let's really draw in some definition for our nostrils. You can duplicate that nostril by dragging and dropping that layer and then edit, flipping it over, and then just kind of moving it over to the side. This kind of assures that you have a very symmetrical nose going. And I really want to go in there now and start adding in some definition as well. We're going to, take in our big brush and make sure that our that the feathering is on, that our brush doesn't have a hard edge. And we're going to kind of loosely draw in basic shapes to where certain things will go, like for example the tip of the nose. And now, just like we did with our nostrils, let's again select that very thin brush tip and let's add in some definition to the sides of our nostrils. And now with another smaller brush with the shape dynamics off, let's try kind of defining the bridge of our nose. Let's add in a little more shadow and definition to this area as well. I want to add a light wash of color just over here, nothing too dark. And now let's break up this sharp white space by adding a little bit of shadow. Now let's also add in some brown to the top part of our nose as well. And now by using our color picker, let's select in the lighter skin tone again and just add in the space for where our highlight will go. The front of your nose isn't directly very round. It has that slight U-shaped shadowing around it. I'm just layering in the shadows and the midtones as I'm going. A lot of erasing and painting on. And now with our shape dynamics on, let's add a very thin line underneath the tip of our nose with a very light skin tone color. This just adds a very hint of reflective light at the bottom. Let's just add in a little more definition over here. And now let's kind of break up that hard edge that we have below our nose. That shadow area, let's add in a few more lighter, warmer, medium toned brush strokes to it so that it just doesn't look so graphic. Let's just add in some lighter shadows back down here again. And now again with a brush, I'm just lightly going over each side of it and just adding in and taking away as I go. This way, what it is, it's a very, soft layering process of adding in definition, especially when you're painting digitally. Let's add some shadow in that area where the nostrils meet the bridge of our nose. And now let's start defining the tip of our nose even more. Remember to select your lighter skin tone, and then just with a big brush, let's just gracefully kind of add in that U shape and kind of really define that tip. And now just using a big brush, let's just start adding in some more definition and really just, bringing in the shape of that nose. And of course, as you're painting, remember to kind of add in the shadow underneath the eyes. Of course, I've gone into more detail in my previous video where I showed you how to paint different styles of eyes. One of those techniques was how to paint a realistic eye. You know, when you are doing your nose, that shadow that is kind of toward the side where the triangle area was, that dark shadow will kind of go underneath your eyebrows to bring in and define that whole area. And now I'm going to select a very light color to add in the highlight for my nose. This instantly adds definition and gives our nose a 3D feel. And now, as before, when we had added a highlight underneath the tip, let's also add a bit of a highlight underneath the nostrils. This again just really kind of adds that pop of 3D to it. You know, that reflective light from the, the space between your lip and your nose that kind of hits the bottom of your nostrils. And now again, let's just, kind of using our big slanted brush, let's just adding in some sharper lines here and there, especially at that tip. We really just want to bring it all in together. Now is the time where I'm going to start, adding in those lights and also adding in those darks. We're going to really start pushing in the contrast to really bring our nose out. And again, with an angled brush, using in the lighter skin tone, let's add in some more sharp definition. And of course, remember to add in a little bit of darkness over the nostrils, toward the bridge of the nose. And just keep kind of erasing and adding around the sides. Just keep defining it as you paint. Again, I'm adding in a little more highlight on the nostrils to just bring them out. And zoom in and out. You can do this by pressing Z on your keyboard. And this way you can really look at your nose, on a wide angle scale, and then when you zoom in, you can really focus on the details. But the reason I keep zooming in and out is so that I don't get too obsessive over things that don't see clearly from far away. Now I'm just going to also clean up at this area down here again, just really kind of bringing the entire thing together. You don't want to make it too mushy and sketchy. And now we're almost done with painting in our nose. I want to add a few last minute details before we finish up. I'm just going to add in a little shadow underneath the eyes like I'd mentioned before. And now on a new multiply layer, you can select this by hitting that little window on the top where it says normal. And let's select a nice red color and kind of paint over our nose. We want to give a bit of a lifelike feel to our nose. If we just leave it this kind of plain brown, then it doesn't kind of look as alive as it should. You can adjust this redness as per your liking. I don't like to make it too red, otherwise it may look a little comical. And now we're done. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to draw a basic set of lips on your face, along with a few techniques to go with it.